Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Magic Minds podcast. Today's episode is with none other than Kayla Barnes, who's leading the charge on health, wellness, lifespan, health span, biohacking across, many audience segments, but especially for women. We touch on so many topics that are wildly under-discussed when it comes to our health and wellness. Not the least of which is a quote that she posted a few weeks ago that has just stuck with me ever since. And that is that health is becoming more and more rare with every day that passes. That is so contrary to what we think, especially in the world of health and wellness or the podcast scene where we think everybody's becoming healthy. We're all going to live to 120 years. And yet she has some really compelling points on how we're actually seeing health become more and more rare rather than become the norm. We touch on everything from seed oils, the prevalence of seed oils and its contribution to chronic diseases. We touch on all of the latest and greatest when it comes to morning routines or gadgets. We touch on all of the free and simple tactics anyone could take today to improve their health and wellness. We touch on so many of these things and more with a woman that is on the bleeding edge of all of this, not just in consuming all of the literature, but also making it so approachable and articulating so simply. So it is a joy to chat with someone like her around all of these topics. So without further delay, let's get into it with Kayla Barnes. This is the Magic Minds podcast. Okay, perfect. You want to start with a little cheers and a shot?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Kayla, cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can't wait to ask you about your recent trip to LA or move to LA, right?
Yeah. Yep. Recent.
But first, we'll start with delicious shot of Magic Mind.
I love that.
So when did you finally move to LA?
Recently. So I told you a little bit about me and my husband's story.
Yeah.
Met, got married pretty quick. And so we got married in September, the end of September. I planned the wedding in 6 weeks, which to him was like so impressive. But to me, I've been a CEO and a business owner for so long, like planning an event was just honestly pretty easy. September, we got married. We spent like a month in Ohio, kind of just making sure my clinic was in a good spot. And
Which
then
is in Cleveland, right?
Yeah, it's in Ohio.
Okay.
And then we moved out here. So it's been amazing. I love the sun. It's funny because actually the plan was always to come out here and open a clinic here, but it just took, as you know, it took a little longer than I had expected. So everything just works out the way it's supposed to.
I'll be part of the welcoming committee. Welcome to
Thank
LA.
you.
We're chilling right by the beach here on a gorgeous summer day. I would love to start with the here and now before we get to the kind of the backstory that I think listeners would love to hear. But the here and now, could you walk us through? It's 10 a.m. on a nice, beautiful morning here in LA. What has your routine been today as someone so plugged into all of the latest research, someone that has a business to run, someone that is leaned on by your entire community to kind of do all of the research, be on the bleeding edge? What do your exact this Tuesday morning look like?
Yeah, I have a pretty lengthy routine.
Yes.
So but these days I'm kind of splitting it up because I used to do everything in the morning and then I would go into the clinic. But now that I'm, remote and working from home, it's great because I break it up a little bit more. But I always start with either getting morning sun right into the eyes, or I do red light. Just kind of depends on basically the availability of sun that day. But when you get sun into the eyes first thing in the morning, it literally signals to your brain it's time to wake up. We are so disconnected from circadian rhythms. So that's the sleep-wake cycle. So when you get up and you get sun, it's like alarm clock for your brain. So I always do that first thing in the morning.
What if people wake up before the sun? I've never known what to do. If you wake up before the sun is out.
Yeah, there's two options. So you can either do something like red light, which is what I usually substitute if I can't get that morning sun, or you can actually just get a Lux light. So I have one of those too, right on my desk, and that will actually mimic the sun. There's even a third option. It's called retimer glasses. I would go to the gym looking so crazy in the morning. So it's literally glasses. They don't have any lenses.
Oh, yeah, I've seen these.
But there's a little light inside of it. So it emits a blue-green light and it basically mimics the sun. And so I would just go into the gym looking like insane. People are like, wow, this girl is totally
they kind of
crazy.
come like an inch off your face.
Yeah, they're pretty huge. They're like plastic, big, little light shining in front of them. So but getting more morning sunlight into the eyes is super, super important. And it also helps you later in the day because it anchors your circadian rhythm. So it says, okay, it's time to wake up. And then what you can do even later is look at the sun setting because again, it's telling your body what time it is.
Okay, cool.
We do that through not only light, but also through food. So when we eat also tells us, your body, what time it is. And then I start my day off personally with prayer, but that could look like meditation. I always say set your mindset before the day sets it for you. So if you don't have any sort of practice in the morning to ground yourself and put yourself in a positive mindset, then the first issue that occurs, which we know there will be issues that present itself, I feel like you can just easily be derailed. But if you go into the day with a really strong mindset, whether that's prayer, gratitude practice, meditation, whatever it looks like for you, you're not going to be impacted by these little things that happen throughout the day. And then
How much time do you set aside for prayer?
I set about 30 minutes. So I actually read my Bible for a little while and then I pray. So, and that's
awesome.
been incredibly helpful for me. It just anchors me, grounds me. I think about, who I want to pray for, who I want to be that day. And it's super helpful.
Yeah, my wife and I do that time with God for about 45 minutes, an hour before the kids get up.
I love that.
Each morning as well. Yeah, it's so true, that foundation. I used to wake up in my 20s running different companies. I'd wake up with my phone, in my texts, in my email, thinking I was being like efficient. I'm in bed emailing. And I was just like, my entire mindset was hijacked by what other people wanted me to think about. A more foundational perspective to start the day. Okay, great.
Yeah, it also, I think it gives you, I always say you can be mindful or mindless throughout your days, right? And when you wake up and you're immediately bombarded with issues or notifications or emails, when do you have time to determine what you want to get done that day? And how do you want to behave as a human that day and what's important to you that day? The foundation of greatness, I believe, is health. And so how can you even get your mindset ready to be healthy that day when you're immediately shocked by whatever notifications have come through overnight? Whatever that looks like for you, some sort of morning practice, and then always movement. So I always hit minimum of 10,000 steps a day. And because I'm mostly working at a computer, I have to actually pay attention to when I do those breaks for movement. So I get outside, take a 15 to 20 minute walk. We're in the hills, so it's basically zone 2 cardio because I have a lot of terrain. But that not only boosts my blood flow for the morning, but I also, get more nature, sun, etc. So that's a really nice and parasympathetic, relaxing way to start my day.
What time, out of curiosity, what time do you wake up?
I wake up naturally every day. So I go to bed at 9:30. I'm in bed by 9:30, like always, every day. So I wake up at about 6, just daily.
Yeah,
Sometimes it'll
awesome.
be slightly later, but typically around 6.
Yeah, great. I say great. I've got to smile because my wife and I are in bed at like 8:30.
I love it.
And we'll read or talk, download from the day. But yeah, try to get asleep by about 9:30, sometimes 9. And it's so great to find a compatriot in that because socially, we know we're like the lone voice in our group of friends saying like, nah, let's do dinner at 6.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you have you had to come up with some social hacks to like put up the stiff arm and say, nope, I'm in bed by 9:30 for, a dinner that friends want to plan at 7:30, 8?
Luckily, I kind of have a public perception of who I am in that respect. So people don't even ask me. And I'm just really honest. I do have like very hard, stops when it comes to things of that nature, even restaurants. There's so many restaurants in LA and there's only like 2 places that I eat. I cook dinner every day for us because I know what's in it. I know it's super healthy. I know where I got the produce. But yeah, people, they kind of already know where I stand on it. So it hasn't been too much of a hurdle for me. But I do know, my husband, he has a much more like social schedule. That's been a kind of big change for him because he used to be going to bed so much later. And now he's going to bed with me at 9:30 and he feels amazing. He's waking up naturally with tons of energy and his lab markers are like amazing. So
in many ways, it's an addiction like any other. I just crave feeling great in the morning. That when someone's like, dude, let's grab dinner. We need to grab dinner. We need to get so-and-so together. It's been too long. Let's get dinner at 7:30, 8. I'm like, as good as that dinner would be, a great day starts with an awesome night's sleep. And I don't really want to throw away an entire day or feel off by jumping into a commitment that then takes me to like a 10:45, 11 p.m. bedtime. It sounds so silly. I think for followers of you, they'd be like all on board. For many Magic Mind followers, subscribers, customers, it might be newer information to them around the amazingness of waking up every morning at the same time, setting that circadian rhythm, and feeling awesome. But it's like the gospel. I will preach it anytime I can about getting to bed early. And there's so few people that nod their head and it resonates with, because most people are like, oh yeah, people say that, but I can't. But okay, so that is awesome. So 6 a.m., the sunlight hitting your eyes. Do you go outside for that? Can you can you gather that through the window?
No, definitely not optimal. You want to actually get exposure. You don't want there to be anything blocking. Again, you don't want sunglasses. You don't want to stare into the sun, of course. You don't want to harm your eyes, but just getting the peripheral exposure is super important.
Okay,
so
awesome.
Do that.
Okay, and then prayer time, then starting the 10,000 steps. Starting towards that goal.
And actually, real quick to go back. So when I'm doing prayer time, I actually do it. I have like a PEMF, like a clinical grade PEMF at my house.
Awesome.
So I sit in that and get the benefits of PEMF. So PEMF is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. And the way I describe it is it's like grounding, which grounding is making contact with the earth. There are many, many scientific publications to verify that it can be anti-inflammatory and really beneficial for our health to make contact with the earth. PEMF is like grounding on steroids. So you're really getting these healing frequencies throughout the body. And it's amazing because if you have like a clinical grade device, you can actually feel areas of inflammation being impacted. So it's pretty cool. Like everyone that comes to our house is basically like a clinic, and people sit in it and they'll feel it in different areas of their body. And when I ask them, they've usually had like an injury there at some point or have pain there. So I sit in the PEMF. We have it separated into like 2 little chairs in our living room, and read my Bible and do my prayer time in that.
What's the brand?
It is Pulse PEMF. It's a device, there's a lot of kind of like home devices. This is really meant, I think, for a clinic, but I just happen to have one at home.
Oh, awesome. I know you used to do ozone therapy. Do you still do that?
I do, yeah. I love ozone therapy. There's so many different ways to do it. So we have ozone at home. We have a device called Simply O3. With that, you can do ozone water. You can do rectal insufflation.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. You can do like limb bagging should you need it. Let's say you have some sort of like infection or something. But that's great to have at home. But at my clinic, we have IV ozone, which is amazing. So it's anti-inflammatory. Really, we see a lot of great results even with cardiovascular health. But it's something that I do typically, definitely if I'm feeling unwell, like if it's antiviral, antibacterial, antiparasitic. So if I like literally don't get sick, because if I start to feel anything coming on, I'll do an IV ozone, stack it with, an immunity IV with some vitamin C in there and just never get sick. I mean,
where could someone do that if they're listening to this on the podcast and they're like, okay, I don't have the ability to do that at home.
Yeah.
What would you say to them if there's something that they want a home device for ozone therapy? Or is it as simple as just looking up a local option for IV ozone therapy?
Yeah, so the home devices is Simply O3, which is, nice because you don't have to leave. And then in terms of like clinic or IV ozone, yeah, these things are becoming so much more popular now. It's fairly easy. I mean, here in LA, we can find one, probably a stone's throw away. In more remote areas, it might be a little bit more difficult, but I would just, look up IV ozone. And we recently rolled out at the clinic, it's called EBOO. So it almost looks like a dialysis machine, but it's super high dose IV ozone. So you always want to titrate with ozone because there's something that can happen anytime that you detox. So ozone also helps detox. You can have something called a Herxheimer reaction. So we know that today our toxic burdens are just through the roof. What does that mean? That means from our food, our air, our water, our personal care products, we are being bombarded by toxins on a daily basis. I was just in France, for example, and even their grocery stores there, everything is in glass. Everything here, even at one of the nicest grocery stores, it's in plastic. Everything is in plastic. There's some stats saying that people are consuming a credit card's worth of plastic every few weeks, and microplastics and nanoplastics.
Polyesters in the clothes, going through the washing machine, coming through the water, then going into the water supply. Yeah, I do want to touch on that with you because you had a good post on that recently.
Well, thank you.
Does the ozone therapy help with these toxins? If you could walk us through that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it can definitely help detox. So another form, so we have the IV ozone, which can also help with detox, but then we also have something called an ozone sauna. So sauna is an amazing way to detox. I think sauna should be an absolute, if you can, in everyone's routine, multiple times a week. I mean, it reduces the risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and now with our toxic burdens, I just think it's so necessary. But the ozone sauna, so now we have like at-home versions of ozone, the rectal and the ozone water, and then we have an IV ozone.
And Simply O3, is that
Simply
the
O3,
brand? Okay, yeah.
Then we have the IV ozone, and then now this ozone sauna component. So it's about 7 times more powerful than a standard sauna, and it actually releases CO2. It opens up your pores so that the ozone can seep in transdermally. And then it has a steam heat component, so you're sweating.
And more powerfully, when you say 7 times more powerful, in what regard?
In detoxification capacity than a normal sauna, which is amazing. It also increases glutathione production naturally, which is our body's master antioxidant. And so that's another way to do ozone. But again, it's really helping to detox the body, reduce inflammation. It's been probably a part of my routine, ozone, for, well, I guess the last 3 years since the clinic has been open.
What is this? Where could someone purchase a ozone sauna? Is that?
You could. It's a little pricey. Again, it's kind of like a clinic device, right? There's like a lot of at-home devices, and then there's like clinic devices. The clinic devices are much more expensive because you're making a profit off of them.
Okay, so look it up online to see if there's one locally. And you only have, do you have one location in Ohio?
We do. Yep, we have one right now, but we're getting ready to expand, and we're going to plan on opening one here. I mean, I miss all my stuff.
Yeah.
So
I want all of this stuff. It's like everything that you're listing. I'm like, okay, this is going to lighten the wallet quite substantially for half of these things, but it would be amazing for there to be a clinic that already has it, that you're just going into 3 times a week. It's my wife and I, we love our local gym, but we love it in addition to working out for the sauna and the cold plunge. We have a cold plunge here as well. But yeah, I don't know of one here on the west side in the Venice area. LA, I don't know of one that's just a location that's all of these things. And the one that was here a few years ago, Upgrade Labs, they didn't have like the bleeding edge, these kinds of tools. And the detoxification is something that I definitely want to zero in with you later in the episode on. But okay, I kind of cut you off with your morning routine by asking about the different ozone approaches. But yeah, keep going through the somewhat lengthy routine that you mentioned.
Yeah, no problem. Well, real quick, if you're looking for the ozone sauna, I would look up Hockett is the brand.
How do you spell that?
HOCATT is Hockett.
Okay. And we'll try to put all of these in the show notes for our listeners.
Amazing. Well. And then so it actually has 10 therapies in there, and one of the other therapies is PEMF. So we touched on that briefly, but then you get that benefit as well.
Oh, wow. In the sauna.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So there's red light, infrared light, there's PEMF, there's actually micro radio frequency coming up to the feet. So it's a really pretty cool device.
But that's the clinical grade. You're probably not going to have one in the home.
Most likely not, yeah. Okay, so going back to the routine, so we have morning sun, we have the prayer and the PEMF, and then the walk. So already, I mean, I'm feeling pretty amazing. And if I didn't do red light before that, I do red light therapy. So we have like 5 or 6 panels at home, but I do that 3 times a week for about 12 to 15 minutes per session. So one of those days I'm going to be doing red light therapy.
On specific parts of the body or full?
It's full, yeah, we have a full body panel. They come in a variety of sizes, and there's so many red light applications now, because not only do we have the red light, that's the full body panel. We also have Neuronic, which is actually a helmet with red light that can improve focus and mental clarity.
I've seen these, yeah.
I have a V-Light, which is intranasal red light therapy. So it's literally going to the brain. And then we have a red light therapy cap that is actually for hair rejuvenation. So
cool. Okay, so
it's a red light.
I could hear listeners have a question of, does it ever feel like too much to start the day? Does it ever feel like, okay, a whole lot of work that needs to take place?
I mean, for me, it's both my professional life and my personal life, and it's just how I've prioritized things. But for me, I would much rather invest the time to feel amazing and be ultra productive later in the day than just immediately go into work. Because it's not really about and I've learned this over the years, it's not about the hours that I put in, it's the result of the work. So if I can be more effective, more focused, and feel better, I mean, that's a game changer.
Right.
If I don't work out, and there's tons of, data on what exercise does, it improves your mood, improves blood flow. Not only does it, protect your body now and in the future, but it makes you feel really good. It releases endorphins. It can increase dopamine. So, I mean, if I don't work out, I don't feel my best. Mm-hmm. So I always prioritize those things.
Okay. And to round, is there anything else we haven't touched on in your morning routine?
Yeah, there's more.
I love that. Okay,
there's more. So then I do cold therapy. And so I will caveat this with, I do cold therapy in the first half of my cycle because women and men are quite different when it comes to, let's say, hormetic stressors. So hormetic stressors are good, but are still a stressor on the body. So things like exercise, sauna, cold therapy, all good and can increase our capacity for stress overall. Men, you don't have a cycle. So your hormones are very stable throughout the month. So I put cold therapy in the first half of my cycle, and then I kind of lay off of it in the second half of the cycle.
And what would happen if you did it throughout the whole cycle?
It's really, bio-individual. Everyone can be different, but let's just say for me, I want to get pregnant soon. So I used to do more cold therapy more consistently, but I want to allow my progesterone levels to rise because it's good for fertility. I'm reducing my stress levels overall to improve, potential fertility outcomes. So, nothing, I mean, you probably wouldn't immediately feel anything horrible, but, you just have to gauge. Everyone has to gauge where you're at. Cold therapy, even if, let's say you're under immense stress, right? When you were having all these health issues and, drinking tons of coffee and stimulants and all that stuff, that wouldn't have probably been the best time to do cold therapy for you because it's a shock to the body. So you want to make sure you're in the right mindset and, gauging your protocol and refining your protocol around how you feel and current stress levels.
Yeah.
But then I do cold therapy, which is amazing. And our house is great because it's direct sun basically most of the day. So then I get out and I do a light workout. So cold therapy is amazing for workouts actually because there's literature to support that it extends endurance. So by bringing your core temperature down, you can be more intense or exercise longer. And so I usually do it before I do my workout. Some people like to do it after, but there's it can potentially reduce your gains a little bit if you're trying to add a muscle mass.
Do you mind telling us more about that? Yeah, that I've heard that advice to not do a cold plunge after strength training because of you want the pro-inflammatory effects. Is it well understood? Is that just a hypothesis? And
it's pretty understood because the cold therapy, if you think about it, if you become super cold, it reduces the inflammation pretty quickly, especially when you're submerging. So if you are looking to add muscle, I would definitely do the cold before versus after because it can, I don't know the exact figure. I'd have to pull up some of the literature, but it's not a substantial amount of decreasing the gains. And, if you're doing, let's say, HIIT or more of an endurance and not doing strength, it's probably okay to do cold therapy after if you really want to, because there's a little bit of literature around it reducing muscle soreness.
How well understood the mitigation of muscle gains that it compromises if you do it after strength training? But you said not much. What would be not much? The
literature's there that it does reduce a little bit, but the question is if let's just say you love doing cold therapy after your workout, the gains might be minimized a small amount, but it's not like if you're doing cold therapy, you're never going to add muscle.
Okay, so it doesn't negate it.
Yeah, it doesn't completely negate the benefit of the strength training.
Okay, cool. Keep going with the morning routine.
So we have the cold therapy, and then I'm doing a lot of lighter workouts these days. So I'm doing 30 to 45 minutes, just 4 to 5 times a week. So do a light workout. I actually got rid of my gym membership, and I'm just working on our deck because it's sun exposure. I'm in nature, and it feels really good. So I'm just doing a light workout, and then I usually have my coffee in the morning and my Magic Mind, and then I get to work.
How much time does it typically take to go through that?
It's about an hour and a half-ish.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Hour and 45. Just kind of depends on how long my workout is. And if I have something booked, obviously I speed it up a little bit, but somewhere around there.
Yeah, and there's that, what's that old think it's Abraham Lincoln quote of give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'll spend the first 5 sharpening the axe. So that hour and a half or even 2 hours is one hell of an investment for running a business or just all of the things that happen in our modern lives during the course of a day. Are there any things that you used to do that you no longer do with personal choice or science doesn't seem to support it?
I've definitely dialed back my fasting. I am very type A. So if I like something, if I understand that it's good for me, I will like do it to a T. You know, that's something, I think a mindset of discipline is something that I've really, really focused on over the course of the last 10, 15 years. So I used to love fasting, and I also loved how it made me feel. But now, you know, especially with more emerging literature around like female hormones and female health and me understanding that literature more, I was just adding a few too many stressors onto my body because I was lean, I was fasting, I was working out really hard, I was doing sauna, cold plunge, I was doing all the things. Like I said, for men and women, that's just a little bit different. So I'm laying off the fasting a little bit. I'm still doing, of course, time-restricted feeding because I don't believe going back to having a dinner late at night, not only are you not going to go to bed on time, but eating early is one of the most beneficial things that you can do for your sleep. When you eat early, then your body's able to digest the food. If you eat right before going to bed, like my husband would always eat like really close to bed. When we got engaged, I got him an Oura ring and then we share our data. So I could see the quality of sleep. So when your body's trying to digest a big meal, it's going to keep your heart rate up, which there's a really close relationship between your heart rate and then getting really deep, high quality, deep and REM sleep, which are the most 2 restorative phases. So if you eat a huge meal close to bed, your body's going to be digesting that food and you're not going to get into those deepest stages of sleep or not get into as much of it as you could have. So eating early is a really big one.
Fasting, what did you do and what do you do now?
I used to fast a full day every other week. Don't do that at all anymore. Now I'm eating, my last meal is at 5. So I'm basically just not eating from 5 p.m. until about 9 or 9:30 the next day when I have breakfast. I also used to not have my first meal until noon or 1. And so I would be eating only from like 1 o'clock to 4:30, very short eating window. And so I've extended that quite a bit.
And what were the reasons again? Just around too many stressors on the body? Is the research, you touched on the research bring something to light? Really,
it was when I got into female-specific research, because the thing is there's a large discrepancy. Like most of the literature, most of the protocols, like, you know, are for men based on men's data. And that's a big venture of mine or endeavor of mine later this year is I hired a few female PhD candidates to index all the literature for me so that I can start to help using my platform Relationships Connections to help fund human-female studies on a lot of these protocols that we really just don't have data on.
And for listeners, if you don't follow Kayla on Instagram, I highly recommend it because it is so informative on all of the things we've touched on just in the last 10 minutes of just getting to know you and from the perspective of your start to the day, but also other things that we'll get into in the podcast. But the bleeding edge of looking through these things from both scientifically literate lens, but also a really beautifully articulated lens, just being able to read through these things to find really simple things to add, incorporate into a routine or really simple ways to articulate why something's beneficial. I'm sure people are already picking up on in our convo, but
thank you.
It's true. You really, it's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to be able to articulate it. It's another thing to articulate things, but then not truly understand them. So you have a great intersection of both of those. Within the women's specific side of things, this is certainly something that I've come across more and more lately, but for listeners that might not know why that's so important, do you mind giving a little more airtime to that and what you said about most of the data being just men?
Yeah. I mean, women weren't required to be included in studies until, I believe, 1993. So that's pretty recent. And although men and women do have a lot of similarities, obviously we have a lot of differences. I mean, women have a 28 to 30 day cycle where our hormones are changing kind of in each different section of the cycle. So that's something that we have to be cognizant of. And then also, you know, women are, you know, if you're looking to be building a family, which you have 3 kids, which is so exciting. But me and my husband want to have quite a few kids. We're thinking, 6 plus.
Whoa, awesome.
Yeah, we want to have a lot of kids.
How many siblings do you have?
Majority of my life is one of 5. And He grew up as one of 6. So
awesome. I'm one of 5 as well.
I love that. I love the idea of big families. With that being said, where I'm at in my life, I am being very cognizant of like fertility and optimizing fertility. By the way, I think you know this, but I put out all my labs and then I did a massive fertility venture for both me and Warren. Essentially, my fertility status right now, I'm 33 chronologically, and I have basically the fertility status of like a mid-20-year-old. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've been putting out your labs for a long time.
I have been, yeah.
That people can kind of see. And
I definitely don't see myself as being like an influencer because I don't know, I see myself as a businesswoman, but nothing against that at all whatsoever. And I'm leaning into it more now. But I think that should be like a standard that if you're talking about what you're doing health-wise, then you share what your results are.
There's like this whole thing of like, anti-credentialing of don't show your credentials, or that's somehow gatekeeping. But there's a reason that credentials have mattered throughout human history is we kind of want to know, all right, this person has a large microphone. All right, let's actually see if they should have one, or if what they're saying maps to what they're doing. And I remember hearing this only maybe 3 years ago, that so much of the data will not include women because of, there is fluctuations in the cycle that for a 4-week study, that might be complicating the data. You don't know if it's somehow throwing off the data because it's just extra variables around almost kind of anything that people would want to study. So then you'd see all of this data on cycling and strength exercise, and it has this improvement on, and then you'd look in and say like all 35 participants were men or fasting. And it's like all 38 participants, all 110 were men. It's largely a stone unturned on what's actually appropriate for women, or what's detrimental, what's even more beneficial.
Well, that's really the problem, because we have so many, let's call them quote unquote protocols, right, for cold therapy and sauna and exercise and so many different things for health optimization, but we don't necessarily have the data on that for women. So that's certainly changing. Again, big initiative of mine, but also there's so many people in this space that want more of that too. And the amazing thing is wearables and companies that have an understanding of where women are in their cycle. So that's what I'm so excited about. Like, I have a relationship and love Oura Ring, for example. They super lean into women's health, and you can track where you're at in your cycle with the Oura Ring, and then like integrations with like natural cycles also help with understanding where you're at. So I think it should certainly be much easier now to recruit participants and have women that are all in the same phase of their cycle. So that's really exciting.
That would be a game changing to kind of inoculate that fluctuation. Now that we're talking about it, it's so interesting that I feel like, and my wife, she is kind of leading the charge in many ways in our family on the biohacking side of things. And that really shifted about 2 or 3 years ago. But a question for you is, when did you start to notice women becoming more interested, fascinated by the biohacking side of things, that scientifically literate side of things, and wanting to understand these aspects to a morning routine? Did you notice a shift in the last several years, or has it always been kind of there? And maybe I just wasn't privy to it because of the different Reddit threads and forums that I was a part of that seemed to be male dominated.
For the most part, they are male dominated because the figures currently are male dominated, right? But I think it's always been there. I mean, it's hard for me to say specifically because I've always had a predominantly female audience as a female. Definitely females have always been interested. Females are so in tune with their body as well, from what I've come to understand and just, feedback from my community. So, and I also think a lot of times women are, maybe the purchasers in the household, they are looking into what can be, just like your wife is kind of leading the charge. I'm the chief health officer of our family. So I'm also making those decisions. But no, I think women have always been super interested. It's a little difficult to wade through and know. It basically leaves more questions because all of the current figures, or most of the current figures, are male, and they're operating off male data. So I'm excited for that, to just basic studies like cold therapy and women specifically. Like, what does that look like? What is it doing to our hormones? What is it doing to our cortisol levels? How often should we do it? What should the exact protocol be? I'm excited to, help recruit participants this year and just fund a few studies so that we have them.
My wife, with our third daughter, she would go to the ocean. She would go into the ocean every day while she was pregnant, and kind of an intuitive feel that I think this is beneficial. There's obviously built-in grounding. There's some of the, obviously, vitamin D. It's cold, but not super cold. And then sodium, magnesium, potassium in the water. Just kind of like stringing these things together. There's no real, and maybe there is, but we didn't have any real scientific references of why to do it, but she did it every day. And we've had the most chill third baby. And we
really?
have two
I
others.
love that.
Yeah, but we don't exactly know why. There's no, when we have tried to look up the research, there hasn't been much that comes to light. So I feel like this whole wealth of resources waiting for us to discover for also the beneficial side of things of this is when you should do this. This is why you should do this for either fertility or for, health of a pregnancy. It's all just kind of like complete, seems like dark space.
You bring up such a great point. Yeah, you're right. Like based on what I understand, there's not a ton of even data on what is happening to a woman from like, a complete set of biomarkers. So I'm not going to do this with all my pregnancies, but the first one, I'm actually going to do lab work, like comprehensive, like super, hundreds of biomarkers, NAD testing, biological age testing, probably every 2 weeks to understand what's happening every single step of the way, and then just release that data publicly. Because based on what I've seen, I can't find anything of that nature just yet.
In our household, so to speak from that front, we're scratching the surface on exactly what you're saying of maybe we shouldn't do. So she missed her cycle for a few months and was like, maybe the fasting is too
overdoing
intense,
it,
or maybe the cold therapy every morning is too intense. So there's the finding the rhythm side of things, and maybe there's dialing things back. But then what we just touched on of the biohacking for the healthiest pregnancy possible, or almost the biomarkers of the baby. Like I feel like it's complete dark ages, or we'll look back and say we had no idea outside of some nutraceuticals. Like we had no idea what was most beneficial for fertility or a healthy pregnancy. So as a household, pretty plugged in, that it does feel so nascent. I don't even know if nascent's a word. I don't know anyone that's really scratching the surface on that side of things. And maybe I'm totally out of the loop. Do you know of any?
No. I mean, you're definitely not wrong. I mean, there's many more like desires, and people are, there's some women in the space that are really like doing a great job helping to push some of this stuff through. People like in, OBGYN, doctors wanting to learn more, people in fertility clinics. I mean, fertility is such a scary thing right now, actually. I think the rates have been decreasing about 1%, which doesn't per year, but that doesn't sound like a lot as 1 year. But if you think of the past 50 years, 30 years, then that's a big problem.
I want to round out the morning routine, but I would love to chat about that more.
Yeah.
And you've got some great posts that weave into our convo, but is there anything else we haven't touched on within things that you used to do that you no longer do?
I would definitely say fasting is the biggest one. And I think maybe something that I've incorporated in, I have been saying this recently, but I think like getting married was the best thing, like best biohack I've ever done. And we should probably touch base on my daytime routine and then my nighttime routine too, because it's like an extension. I used to only be doing basically optimization at night after work. And now I just relax with my husband. And that is so good for my nervous system. Like I never watched television ever prior to meeting my husband. And I'm most certainly not saying like adopting a television practice is a healthy thing necessarily. And I think most people already have that. But for me, doing something to relax and just
turn off the mind for a little bit.
Yeah. And activate my parasympathetic system before going to bed has been a game changer.
Oh, that's great to hear. And not something you hear I don't know if I've ever heard that around marriage being one of the best biohacking.
We know that community is like incredibly important to longevity. Having a strong community, people you love, trust, and we're living in a day and age where you might have a lot of followers online or feel like you have a lot of acquaintances. But I think we're losing a little bit of that community aspect. And especially if you're busy and if you're running businesses or companies, it's hard to make time for hanging out with friends and investing in relationships. But we know, there's something called the blue zones. I'm sure you've heard of them. And people are living the longest. And one of the biggest things is, of course, like walking a lot and movement, but it's their communities. And that's how neighborhoods all used to be. On the way from France back home in the Uber, our Uber driver was actually talking about how he felt like LA, everyone was to their self. It wasn't, where he was from. Everybody was out in the streets, in the neighborhoods, having fun, celebrating, like always together. Mm-hmm. Whereas what he's observed in the past 7 years since he's been here was that everyone's very protective and private of their own life.
Mm-hmm. What's great about many of these health and wellness, it's almost like the 2024 version of Cheers isn't, certainly like in the Venice areas, isn't the pub where you just see everybody at the same, 5 p.m. schedule, but it's at the gym or at the yoga studio, at the breathwork class and the sauna. It's we hired at Magic Mind, our latest employee that we hired is someone that I met in the sauna a few times at Open, this yoga studio that my wife and I love. There's like a social club. We all go about the same time. And so I was thinking the other day, this is like the 2024 LA Cheers. Part of that, I thought like, I don't know, kind of like tongue in cheek. And part of it was like, man, this is so cool that that community around similar values is popping up around health and wellness. That is not just fascinating to see, but really additive to our lives. Like Jeremy, Mark, Merritt, like I know the people that we all go to the sauna together. And where we're from in Dallas, Texas, that probably sounds kind of like somewhat laughable. And yet I feel like that's the future. As the adage goes, the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed. It is so much healthier than I feel like the bars where you just go at 5 p.m. every night, you're going to have a drink. Mm-hmm. Like we're going to look back at photos of that as like we look at photos of opium dens 80 years ago. Like it's like, whoa, that's what we used to do, just go and poison our bodies. There's no judgment of people that drink. It's actually a great way to turn off or a great way to incorporate some awesome senses of community. But I think we're so innovative. We're going to find healthier ways of doing that versus undeniably carcinogenic poison.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
The topic of the morning routine. How did you first come across Magic Mind, by the way?
Well, I'm in a position, I'm pretty lucky. I come across a lot of amazing products. So I don't remember the exact way, but I'm sure just saw someone share about it. I follow like only a few hundred people, but they're all like excited about health and wellness. So I'm pretty lucky in that respect. All the cool stuff like Magic Mind comes across my desk.
Out of all of the products that you do come across, which has got to be somewhat overwhelming, what about Magic Mind has been for listeners from an expert's point of view? What have you dug about Magic Mind and adding it to your morning routine?
First of all, I'm a big fan of matcha, loaded with antioxidants. Yours is super high quality, like ceremonial grade. So I love that. And in general, everyone has a different opinion on coffee, right? But I think as long as the coffee is really high quality, I think it's okay in moderation. But I love to feel super energized. So Magic Mind is a great addition for me with the matcha. And I love that you guys have a blend of adaptogens and it's really great and it tastes good and it's so small, easy to travel with, easy to take with you. A big thing for me, like when I'm traveling, is maintaining health. It's really difficult to do at the level that I do at home on the road. But when you can pack some Magic Minds, that makes it a lot easier.
And we'll be coming out with a glass bottle with concentrate that people can dial up, dial down, depending on the strength they want, but moving away from at least having an option that's glass instead of plastic.
I love that.
From what we touched on before, which I'm going to touch on again because you had a great post on plastics recently. But real quick, I think for listeners, now that we've gone through the morning routine, before we get to the daily routine or nightly routine, do you mind giving listeners a little background on you and how you found yourself, in many ways, leading the charge? Hundreds of thousands of people following the things that you say around these topics, running one of the coolest clinics on the planet that is incorporating so much of what we just touched on. How did you find yourself in that seat running the businesses that you're running and being the influential voice that you are in this space?
Well, thank you. Yeah. So it started in college. I was studying nutrition and I didn't grow up with healthy food really at all. Very standard American diet. Ate Pop-Tarts sometimes for breakfast, which just seems so crazy to me now. Or like cereals that are like dessert, like a Reese Puff. Like why?
Dude, I ate cereals that were little cookies. It still exists, But I cannot believe it was like, this is the cereal. You're going to have 100 tiny little cookies for breakfast.
No, I know. The cookie one, the Reese Puff one, the one with the marshmallows. It was crazy. It was totally crazy. I don't know how the expectation is you eat that and then you go do schoolwork. But anyways, I started studying nutrition and just changing what I ate. And I felt so much better. I was like, wow, this is a big change just based on changing some of my nutrition. And I've always been an entrepreneur. So I got kind of obsessed with health optimization because in my mind, I was like, okay, I have huge goals for myself. How am I going to get to the place I want to be? And I think that's through optimizing my health, productivity, focus. So I just started really self-researching alongside nutrition. How could I perform better? And found some of these therapies like many years ago. Like red light therapy is becoming so popular now. I was doing red light like 8 years ago. I was doing peptides many years ago. I had a CGM before there was even a direct-to-consumer company.
Continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah, a continuous glucose monitor. Yeah, they're pretty easy. They're easy now to get. Like my friend Dr. Casey is a co-founder of the company Levels. Just basically a little monitor you stick on your arm and it'll tell you your glucose levels. So I just got fascinated by health optimization. And then I got really intrigued by the work of Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a psychiatrist, but I think he's revolutionized psychiatry by actually looking at the brain. So any other organ in the body, if you have an issue with your heart, you would get your heart imaged and see what's going on. That's not how we've approached brain and cognitive related disorders.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. So typically psychiatry, you'd go in, take a standardized test, and then leave most likely with a prescription or some sort of behavioral changes, something of that nature. And so he said, let's actually look at the brain. So started using SPECT imaging, which is a measurement of blood flow and activity in the brain. And then you can say, okay, why do you, just like everything. So at my clinic, I call it a longevity medicine clinic, but we are doing root cause medicine, also known sometimes as functional medicine. It's like, why? He was looking to get to the root cause of why. I mean, mental health disorders, depression, anxiety, things of that nature are the number one cause of disability worldwide right now.
Yeah, I saw you post on that.
And so...
Do you mind saying that again for people to really grok what you just said?
Mental health disorders are the number one disability worldwide. So it's a serious issue and we have to address it. I mean, it's really wild that these aren't the headlines that we see because obviously we should. We have to address that and figure out why, the root cause. I mean, I have a lot of ideas about it. Everything from obviously what we're eating because our gut and our brain are directly connected. We actually have neurons in our gut. Most of our serotonin, which is related to happiness, is housed in our gut. Most of our immune system is housed in our gut. So when you're eating the food that we have here in the US with, packaged, processed, ultra processed. I mean, the majority of an average American's diet is processed and ultra processed foods.
Do you mind giving a breakdown of the difference between processed and ultra processed?
Yeah, I mean, processed foods can really even be sometimes whole foods combined, but any sort of processing. To make it simple, if you look on the back of, first of all, I completely avoid packaged foods. They're ultra processed. So you have multiple steps of the processing. And these are foods that don't really have any or have very little nutrient value, but lots of sugar, carbs, different seed oils. And these are not foods that are going to optimize brain health, cellular health. Every piece of food I eat, I think of, is that going to improve or be a negative impact on my cell? It's like our mom said it so long ago, right? Like you are what you eat, but literally you are what you eat. So it's not just calories, it's information for your cells. Your cells, your brain is built on what you're eating. Our brain is only about, 2 pounds, but it consumes about 30% of our calories. It's a very energy consumptive organ.
Is there a case to be made to consume certain foods for like that calorie consumption at certain times in the day?
Like foods for brain health or brain support?
For brain support, for brain function of... Like I know the only thing that comes to mind is really famous running back Marshawn Lynch. And he said that his dietary secret was eating a whole pack of Skittles throughout the game and just having a lot of sugar during a game. And I take that as an example of like, I guess he just wanted to have a sugar high, or it's just like a habitual, like a, crutch. He's like, that worked that one game. So it's a good luck charm. But is there something that someone would, people talk about dark chocolate. Are there things to consume during the day that would be beneficial for the fact that you just said that the brain is consuming a third of our calories.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive organ. Are there foods that would be beneficial for that brain support during the day? Not kind of like long-term, but brain support during the day of, I don't know, more carbs than you might think. Anything in that area code that comes to mind?
Definitely protein is super important for our neurotransmitters. And I mean, it's also important for satiety, energy. So protein. And obviously you want to do the highest quality possible. So I do like grass-fed, grass-finished, free range. High quality matters, of course, because again, if we're thinking about this is what we're giving our brain to operate. If you eat like junk, you're going to think like junk and feel like junk. I mean, just pretty straightforward. So definitely protein. Getting really high quality protein is great for neurotransmitter production. Healthy fats. So the brain is mostly fats, like the consistency of soft butter. So healthy fats, things like avocados are really great. We also want antioxidants. And it's not necessarily like a supplement, where you can kind of modulate like your thinking necessarily directly through food, but it's like creating the health of the brain. I think of the brain as we have the hardware, which is like the physical brain, and things like exercise, sleep, nutrition, high quality water. Those things are all going to really help the hardware of the brain. And then we have the software. So that's the program that we're running. That is how we think, what we think about ourselves. Going back to the food, high quality protein. We have the healthy fats, and antioxidants are amazing. Things like dark berries, like blueberries, blackberries are really good.
That's right. Yeah. Dark blueberries or blueberries. Yeah. What is the connection? I remember coming across it, but I don't remember.
Mostly antioxidant capacity, antioxidant offering for the brain and for the body. That's a really great way to eat, great thing to eat throughout the day. Again, you want to try to get organic. There's this resource, it's called the Environmental Working Group, because it can be super expensive to eat organic. So they have something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So that's kind of, it changes every year. It's like what foods are the most heavily pesticided. So you want to buy everything you can on the Dirty Dozen as organic, and the Clean 15 are a little bit more flexible. Also, if you think about it, like foods that have a covering, like a banana, a watermelon, an avocado, then the pesticides are being sprayed more so on the fruit or the vegetable versus a strawberry, blackberry, blueberry, or raspberries where it just can seep in. So I think that could be really important. Also, hydration, super important. So again, the brain is mostly like fat and water. So we need to keep it super hydrated. So waking up, getting a big glass of water, maybe some minerals, electrolytes in your water. Great way to start the day.
Man, there's so many rabbit holes I want to go down with you, but just you touched on healthy water. What would unhealthy water be?
I would
and then what is
never drink tap water.
Okay.
I mean, you literally couldn't pay me to drink tap water. It's literally loaded with like toxins. There are fish even in the sea that are tested, and they have like pharmaceuticals, and that this type of stuff can be seeping into our water system. If you go to the EWG and you look at their local tap water database, you can put in your zip code and it will tell you the levels of different toxins from chlorine, chromium, lead, heavy metals, all this stuff, the levels that's in your local water supply. Tap water, for me, absolutely no.
It's really easy to look these things up. You can just see right off the bat, like Malibu water is insane. Malibu tap water, in terms of chlorine, LA is known for bad tap water. But Malibu, which you'd think is like clean living by the ocean, it's awful. And you can smell the chlorine as you drink it. Okay, so where are the cleanest sources of healthy water?
I think just investing in a water filter, like we have reverse osmosis water. There's a company, AquaTrue is what I use. That's like the highest level of water filtration. And then because it literally pulls out everything, you do want to remineralize it. So I put in some trace mineral drops or something of that nature. But unfortunately, basically, you look at the actual testing of the filter, right? So I've looked at all this stuff. Brita is not sufficient in my opinion. You need a high quality water filter, and that'll pay for itself in time. Don't drink out of plastic either, because you're again drinking all these microplastics. You're good if you just get a high quality water filter and you can remineralize the water. We have shower water filters. We're going to be getting just a full home water filter. We recently moved, so we don't have like a whole home water filtration system yet. But if you own your home, I would recommend doing that. Definitely, I think worth it long term, because not only is there the water that you're drinking, but then there's the water that you're showering in, and our skin is our largest organ. So those toxins are seeping, into your body. I think having a water filter of some nature, you can get one fairly cheap even off like Amazon, is a game changer. You definitely want to, even what you're cooking with and what you're brushing your teeth with and all that stuff. So we just use filtered water across the board. I also am a big fan of like mineral water and in glass, of course. Because I don't really drink, I maybe have like 2 glasses of red wine per year. It doesn't really do much for me, but sometimes I do it from time to time.
When you're at a restaurant, is there it's just bottle, so it's not going to be tap? Are there any waters you're like, I'm not going to drink that? Maybe they bring something out and it's...
yeah, quite a few. I usually always ask for like a glass bottle of still or sparkling. It kind of depends. But if it's in plastic, it's usually a no-go. But that's why, literally I'm in LA and I'm only eating at 2 places.
Yeah. What are the 2 places?
Erewhon, which is not even a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's a grocery store.
Amazing.
It's special.
Best grocery store in the world.
It really is, yeah. And this place called Mathieu in Beverly Hills.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So it's grass-fed, grass-finished Wagyu. They have, great water filtration, no seed oils. So
we just got the email that we're the number 1 selling shot at Erewhon, 3x better than next best selling shot. We knew we were the number 1 shot, but we did not know it was 3x better.
That's amazing.
Man, we are bumping up on the end of our time, but I want to touch on a few things that you posted recently, if you don't mind. So many of the things that we've chatted about are, if someone is looking up each option, can be like, okay, that is so expensive. But you posted recently about the free ways to upgrade your health.
Yeah.
I'll read through the post and then we'd love for you to touch on if someone were to take anything away from this post, 1 or 2 or 3 things, but maybe starting with the most important, which one would come to mind? So you posted, I think this was maybe in the last few days, but free ways to upgrade your health. Grounding, 30 minutes per day can help reduce inflammation, improve cellular health, reduce stress. Sun, 10 to 30 minutes every morning, improve circadian rhythm. Exercise, swipe to see exercise timing. So you give some more context on that. Improves blood flow, mental health, heart health, brain health, and more. I actually just read that in 2015, the number of deaths from self-inflicted injury was surpassed all of the deaths from conflict, violence, crime combined in 2015. So we think about like, world peace, let's get to world peace. We are closer to world peace than we are to inner peace in the last decade, in our lifetimes. And people are not talking nearly enough, as you touched on the mental health side of things, which is actually that's one of the posts that I wanted to chat with you about. But to stick on this one, walking 10,000 steps per day improves blood flow, can decrease stress. Breath work helps reduce stress. 80 to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. And last on this list, going to bed earlier helps reduce hunger hormones, improve blood pressure, out of those 6 things, grounding, sun, exercise, walking, breath work, going to bed earlier. These are completely free.
Totally free.
And if people are hearing those 6 things, what comes to mind for you of like, you've got to take this away from that list?
It's most certainly sleep, because sleep is going to set your next day, right? So going to bed earlier, getting really high quality sleep, it's going to help you stay accountable to everything else that you could be doing. That is also free. So you'll wake up more energized. You'll be less hungry because our hunger hormone ghrelin is literally increased when we have a poor night of sleep. And so then you'll have more cravings. So if you get a super high quality night of sleep, it's setting you up for success the next day. So it's something, if you're only going to take one thing away from this, it's like go to bed early tonight. Start to improve your sleep consistency. So going to bed at the same time, like you and I do, like we're always making sure we're in bed by X amount of time. Just do that. And you're going to feel so much better the next day. And then you're going to be more motivated and more disciplined to then do the rest of the habits on the list.
In fact, I've said this on the podcast before. The best advice I ever got in my professional life had nothing to do, it was not from a mentor, it's not from a business leader whatsoever. It was from a sleep doctor. It said, wake up every morning at the same time, and then going to bed at the same time will take care of itself. But for
absolutely
8 days in a row, just wake up every morning at the same time to set that 24-hour circadian rhythm. She said, never take melatonin, like 5 grams, 3 grams of melatonin. It's way too much, and that will actually displace your body's natural production. But if you do need to reset your time, let's say you're traveling, time zone change, or you hear a podcast like this and you're like, all right, I want to try to go into bed at 9:30, and you're used to going to bed at 12:30 or 1. She said, take 300 micrograms of melatonin 3 hours before bed to kickstart your body's natural production. But don't take milligrams. It's way too strong. It'll replace your body's natural production, but micrograms to shift that time 3 hours before you want to go to bed. And holy shit, that worked so well to where I don't know, when I first took it, maybe 7 p.m. And by 10 p.m., I was exhausted. And I used to go to bed at like 2, 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
But what do you think about that last piece of advice from our micro?
No, I agree. Not a huge fan of large doses of melatonin because of exactly what you said. But if traveling, jet lag, or trying to get into a new sleep pattern can be helpful.
The world we live in, we think like we're discovering all these new things. We think like, oh, we're all going to live to 120. Sadly, the last 2 years, our life expectancy has gone down.
Yes.
It's not just this continuum. It's like, I do not agree with so much of what Elon Musk says, but he said something so obviously brilliant, but no one had said. He said, if you want brilliant innovation, you have to make it.
Yeah.
And that was something I was like, wow, that's actually so obvious, but no one ever said. We all, we buy the phones, we just buy the computers. We think these things are just coming off of factory lines that no humans need to be involved in, but we actually have to make this stuff. Similarly with our health, we've got to innovate it in these areas. It's not just a graph that goes up and to the right, as we've seen in the last 2 years. But he said health is becoming more rare by the day, and 60% of people have a chronic disease. 60%. This is astonishing and preventable. Most of our current diseases are lifestyle diseases, meaning these conditions are preventable and reversible. Do you mind talking to us about that post and how it's more rare each day?
Absolutely. I mean, we live in a really interesting time right now, right? We have the ability to make substantial strides in our lifespan. Longevity is now an industry, a booming industry. That's so exciting. We have health tech, we have wearables, we have more information about the body than we've ever had before. And we have better ways to optimize it. But at the same point, health outcomes right now, chronic disease, cancer, infertility, diabetes, all these conditions are just going through the roof. So it's super interesting, right? We have more access, more understanding, more knowledge, better medicine, but health is completely suffering. It's interesting because yes, you can take advantage of some of these things. And I think we're going to hit velocity and AI is going to help us understand our health better than ever. But I think truthfully, not only is our environment so much worse and it keeps getting worse with microplastics and toxins, I think that is such a massive issue that is not talked about enough because it's like adding little bits of poison all the time on your skin, in your hair, the food that you eat, the air that you breathe. Every organ. It's everywhere.
It's every fish in the ocean that we think is so deep and naturally caught. And it's like, no, it's got...
Yeah, there's microplastics and everything from, testicles to the placenta in every single major organ. And just even common sense just tells you that can't be a good thing. So I think that it's so important that we have to not only be excited about, how long can we live? What can we push? Because I think sometimes if you say, okay, I'm going to live forever, I'm going to live to 180, it's like, okay, that's nice to say, but how is the question? And we can't just wait around on AI or some amazing, I think gene therapy down the road can be really powerful in extending human lifespan. But you have to do the basics and have the discipline because right now people are sedentary. They're eating a lot of processed foods. We have many chronic conditions that are completely preventable and reversible. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but to me, it's so sad because we have so much power right now and so many resources, at least most people, because the list that you just went through, if you do those things, those free health upgrades, getting the sun, grounding, going to bed early, exercise and movement, all of these things which are free, you're going to be better than 90% of people. And those are all things that are free, but they require discipline. We have to start taking control of our own health. That's the only way we're going to make big strides in not only how long we live, but our health span. So how many healthy years we have on this planet.
You're going to have to come back for a part 2. I say this often in episodes because it's just, we're scratching the surface. Just from the things that we weren't able to go deep on, like that stat of 60% of people suffer from chronic disease. So the natural state is unhealth, not is sickness, is not health. Yeah. And yet our natural state should be health. Or 80 to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. I don't want to pull the thread on that because of the last few minutes here, but is that related to things like hypertension, heart disease, things that are confounded by stress?
Most certainly, yeah. I mean, long-term stress can, definitely manifest in chronic disease and, physical ailments. So definitely a big contributor. And only 6% of Americans are metabolically healthy. 6%.
Wow.
I mean, I'm one of them.
Do you mind telling listeners what by metabolically
it's
healthy?
essentially a measurement of it's a waist size, your triglyceride level, your HDL to LDL ratio, and glucose. I have it on my website, on my protocol. It gives every single breakdown for what is defined as metabolically healthy. For me, I just feel like the combination of what we're eating and how little we're moving. I mean, of course, what else do we really expect than to kind of be in a really poor place with our health? So if I could kind of give something for listeners to just think about, chronic disease, and I was just interviewing one of the top cancer docs in the world, Dr. Keneally, and she says, cancer develops over 10 years. Chronic disease develops over a long time span. So don't wait to get a diagnosis to start improving your health. Mm-hmm. Take walks daily, move your body. I mean, get outside, go to sleep. And with the food can be really expensive. So just do everything that you can. Eat as many single ingredients. So I always say to shop around the perimeter of the store because those are going to be the fresh foods. Have you ever noticed in the middle aisles, it's always usually the packaged and processed foods?
Right.
Just eat single ingredients. Like this is an avocado with a piece of ribeye or a wild caught salmon or, legumes of some nature.
Right.
Just do that. You are worth it. You have to believe. I always say you can't outperform your level of self-esteem. You have to believe that you're worth it too. And make a plan, make a list because, things measured, things improved. So identify what small things are you going to do. Don't try to overhaul everything because just based on science, that doesn't work. But more so try to implement new small habits.
And then the rest of them cascade from there. Like the takeaway on sleep of just trying to get great sleep. It is, then you got an extra 15 minutes to make an omelet in the morning. Then feeling like, okay, I need to have that breakfast bar in the car on the way to work because went to bed so late because I had 3-4 drinks because of the late dinner that then destroyed the sleep, that then led to no time, that then led to the breakfast bar. Whatever the opposite of a cascade, a crescendo can happen with just a few of these footholds into healthy habits, it seems. And we didn't even touch on seed oils.
No,
do you mind giving just 30, 40 seconds on seed oils as being such a core part of that phrase that really should stop everyone in our tracks, that health is becoming more and more rare these days than the idea we have in our heads of we're all going to live to 120 and it's just all going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, seed oils, like industrial processed seed oils, are relatively new to our food supply. And essentially, they are canola is one of the most popular ones, right? And there's a video that I've shared before, but it's the process of how canola oil is made, and it literally looks like sludge. But the main issue with seed oils is that they're high in pro-inflammatory omega-6s. So we have omega-3s, which is, you hear about that from salmon and fish oil and stuff like that. Those are anti-inflammatory. And then we have these pro-inflammatory omega-6s that are just so pervasive in our diet. Everything, so many things have canola oil in them and seed oils. So if you had a tiny bit of seed oil at one point.
When you see vegetable oil on your nutrition label, that is a reframing of canola. It has no vegetables whatsoever. It's typically from cotton seeds. Yeah. Terrible for you. So vegetable oil is such a misnomer.
And it's really inflammatory. And inflammation, I would say, gut health and inflammation, those two are the root cause of most health ailments. We want to keep inflammation low, want to keep our gut health optimized, and you're going to be much better off. But when you're constantly consuming those seed oils, because it's mostly in everything, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but so many of the items on the store shelf and at restaurants and at fast food places, they all just use canola oil. So we have, and different seed oils. And there's actually been some studies on soybean oil and changes in the brain. So in general, I know we don't have a ton of time, but pro-inflammatory, try to avoid them, as much as you can. I love for people to opt for something like an avocado oil. Definitely an olive oil is really great. When it comes to oils, you just want to look at the smoke point because it depends on what you're using them for. Olive oil is better for salads and dressings and cold items. And then whereas an avocado or a ghee or something of that nature would be better for higher heat items because you don't want to oxidize the product by heating it up too high.
Yeah, we just had Alex Snodgrass from Side Dish salad dressing brand where we talked about that it's all avocado oil, no preservatives, all ingredients. You read it and it's like a grocery shopping list versus you think you're having a healthy salad and it's Hidden Valley with a whole lot of vegetable oil in it.
Yeah.
That is one of the leading causes to these chronic diseases that we're just like drenched in. Our diets are drenched in. We don't really realize it, and we think we're eating something healthy. Kayla, thank you so much for this conversation. It could go on for another 5 hours. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And my Instagram is a great place. So it's just Kayla Barnes, KaylaBarnes. I'm sure you'll link that in the show notes. There, I just give tons and tons of free content. It's a lot of fun for me and I enjoy it. My website is KaylaBarnes.com. I have my protocol, I have my labs on there. Recently, one of my newest favorite things, I launched this female-only health optimization community. So I'm sharing tons of courses from like my thoughts on nutrition and what to eat and how to eat and different plans and mindset and brain health stuff and supplements and the newest studies. I think that's one of the most valuable things because I'm reading studies every single day and see when they come out. I like share it and make it like 3 lines. Like, hey, here's what it says. Here's the study if you want to read the whole thing.
Oh, my wife would love that. Where do people find that on Instagram?
Yeah, that's on my website and just says, become a member. I made it pretty cost effective. It's $22 a month and has 30 courses in there. The community is the other big one. Like, I love to see these women helping other women because you can be vulnerable in there. Like, it wasn't working on my Instagram because I would make a post and then people would want more information and I just got flooded with DMs. And then I knew that people couldn't say everything that they wanted to say in an Instagram comment because that's just not appropriate. Right. So it's been super fun for me.
Well, it is so awesome that you are leading the charge in this front that, like I said, we'll look back and feel like, all right, 2024, 2026, that was the total dark ages. That it's not like, oh, the dark ages ended in 1974. No, we are still in the dark ages on so much of this.
Totally.
When it comes to our approach to health. Thank you, Kayla, for the generosity of insight and your time today. And look forward to more amazing content that you're putting out, as well as the location here in LA whenever you're able to open it up.
I know. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me and thank you for building a great company and a great product that I've been enjoying for a long time.
Well, thank you so much for the advocacy along the way. You sharing it with people, it's so awesome when we built the product with, like I said, right before we hit record, 7 years of research before ever starting the project of Magic Mind, just for myself. And now we're 12 years in. It's one of those things where the more people know, the more amped they would be on the ingredients or the approach to building the company. So it is always a huge, huge vote of confidence when an expert loves what we're, like yourself, loves what we're building. So thank you so much for the encouragement along the way.
You are so welcome. And thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Kayla.